Welcome to Culture Before Content. Culture Before Content, from Music for All and presented by Yamaha. And now, here's your host, David Duarte.
Hey, welcome to the show. As they say, I'm David Duarte, your host for Culture Before Content. Whether you're watching live, listening, or enjoying a replay, I am happy you are here. At Music for All and within the Culture Before Content community, our mission is to create, provide, and expand positively life-changing experiences through music. And none of this would happen without support, and we're incredibly grateful to Yamaha, who is our national presenting sponsor, for helping us bring this mission to life. Well, we are glad you're here with us. If you're watching live, this is the perfect time to get involved. Feel free to leave a comment. We'd love for you to join the conversation, whether you want to say hello or have a question or just be cool. Just be amazingly cool. If you enjoy audio broadcasts, you can listen later as audio-only versions are available on Mondays on platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and others. For the video broadcast, including this one, you can always return to watch the full episodes anytime on Music for All's YouTube or Facebook page. And if you're on the Facebook page, remember to look under the video section. I had to look for it one time. But just visit us at musicforall.org/podcast for everything related to culture before content. All right, enough about the business side of life. Let's get to last week's episode. Oh my God, I had such a good time. In last week's episode, I had the honor of speaking with Cynthia Ray Plank, someone I generally admire for the culture she has built in her middle school program. When I first met her, watching her student site read, which by the way, I'm still going to go back, was amazing. We discussed how she fosters student ownership, sets high expectations, and creates an inclusive, joyful space for both jazz and concert band. Suppose you're like me and you believe that culture drives everything. In that case, this is a must-watch conversation filled with practical tools, inspiration, and wisdom that can reshape your entire approach to music education. And Cynthia, thank you so much. She sent me a coffee mug. I thought that was so amazing. I have been drinking out of it at school. So awesome. Thank you so much for that. That's what happens when you're close by. All right. But Cynthia's was great. Let's get on to this week's episode. Today, I'm joined by Adam Mewhorter, an incredible educator whose work is making waves far beyond his classroom. Adam exemplifies inclusive excellence as the director of bands at Southmoore High School in Oklahoma. You may have seen the story where he helps a student in a wheelchair fully participate in the marching band, pushing him across the field. However, that moment wasn't a one-off. It is who Adam is. You're going to get a chance to meet him, and I guarantee you're going to love him. And if you believe in access, compassion, leadership, and what it truly means to show up for kids, this episode is for you. So please welcome to the show, Mr. Adam Mewhorter.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Hey, welcome, Adam. Thank you so much for being here today. I think both of us, by the way, have been very funny about thanking each other for being on the show, because I know, as I say to everyone, it is my honor to get a chance to hang out with really cool people every Sunday.
Awesome. Can't wait to hear. I can't wait for the discussion today.
Yeah, let's see where that goes. So let's start the discussion with the ever popular question. Who is Adam Mewhorter? Why don't you tell us a little about yourself and a little bit about your program?
Awesome. Well, my name's Adam Mewhorter. I teach at Southmoore High School in Oklahoma. I've been there since the school opened in 2008. So all 17 years the school has been in existence. Had the great opportunity to be there. We have developed into by at least many standards, including ours, a nice, successful program with a good marching band, 4 jazz bands, all-inclusive program, a good amount of kids, and really, in my estimation, doing good things in our community for our students. So that's what our in a nutshell, who we are, and I get to lead that along with lots of people that we work with.
All right, let's ask a fun question, because I'm all about fun questions from time to time. So when's your last day of school? How close are you to the end of the year?
Yeah, so I call it the sprint to the end. This when you come out of spring break to the end, it is one thing after another. We end on Friday, and I get on a cruise ship on Saturday. So that's you have to, one of the part of creating culture is make sure that you're in a good mind space, and I'm going to be in a great mind space on that cruise ship. I'll tell you that.
So wait, 6 days from now, like that, 6 days from now, Friday.
Yeah, we end on Friday. I get on a plane. I'm out of here, and I'm on the ship on Saturday. So that's how you.
Oh my God. I still have like a month and a half to go. So and my brain right now is still around, which is fine. I just laughed. once we get to August and I'm still on vacation, y'all are back in school, then we can talk. So
That
anyway,
I fair enough, fair enough.
so but yeah, and Adam and I were talking. We both ended up found out we both did the same musical this year. This is for
Mhm,
those of you who are band directors. This was my musical week. So this was the
mhm.
6 days of 14-hour days, and I'm trying to remember what my last name is at any moment during this week. So we both did Wizard of Oz. You did Wizard of Oz as well.
Wizard of Oz. Yes, we did. Yes, we did. Sing it
Pop,
right now if you needed to.
right? Poppies and jitterbugs. It's always
Absolutely.
all right. Well, let's talk about this because, like I said, we're going to talk a little about, and I didn't realize, and you just said it in your introduction that you were the your school opened up, and that's when you got a chance to take it
Mhm.
over. Confirming that, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
So that's what I think is like, unique to this culture before content community is we're always talking about culture. So, when you get to start a school, there are some little things that you get to do, which you don't have to worry about too much about tradition because you're literally creating them as they go. So I'm sure like a lot of traditions that your kids have and your students have, whether they were guided by you, guided by the students, or like, to me, traditions kind of end up happening
Mhm.
and we keep up them. But maybe talk about a little bit like what it was like when you took over the school, and let's slowly shift into the culture side, which is what kind of culture do you feel you have built at your school at Southmoore?
When we opened, it was interesting. Obviously, we were a new school, but we split off from two high schools in our district. So we were the third high school. So when we opened, we had about 89 students total, and they came from both high schools and all of the junior highs. So you're talking about this conglomerate of cultures coming into the band that were all different, not bad by any means, but completely different. And so our hope was like, can we create a culture that is ours? And one of the very first things we did is our little chant that we do this to this day, and it's very simple. We literally it's the kids yell, "Who are we, Southmoore?" And we yell, and it's a thing. But we were literally asking the question, "Who are we?" That was the poignant question in the moment. Like, who are we? What are we trying to be? And how are we going to be differentiate ourselves from other cultures so we are us and not the other schools that they came from? And so I think just that starting that little thing from the very beginning, saying, "Hey, this is who we are." And then second, what do we want to be? And that was a group discussion. Obviously, I have it as a teacher, what I want it to be, but I also had a group of students in a community that I started to serve. What do they want it to be? And we got to create that from day one. And the after effects of that day, those days building the school are still here today. The culture of hard work, culture of compassion, culture of caring for each other, those lasted to where we are 17 years, and they were created in year one by those students and that staff. And we were very cognizant that we were creating something in that moment.
Oh, and so to our listeners out there, we've got some amazing pictures going on in the background. Where's that mountain? That looks
That's
amazing.
at the Matterhorn. Those are with some students in Austria. Yeah, it's pretty cool, huh?
Oh my gosh, I was gonna say
Yeah.
that did not look like Disneyland whatsoever. I'm just
No,
throwing that
no,
out
not
there.
at all. I've been to Space Mountain. It's not the same. It's not the
Oh,
same.
gosh. Actually, oddly, that's where my band trip is coming up here in late June. So I get to go. I'll
Sweet.
take my picture in front of that Matterhorn. But
We just
and
got back.
oh, amazing! Did you do any of the clinics or
Well,
did you perform? What
we
was
we
your what
we
was
did
your?
the march down the main street type of thing. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's
it
so
was incredible.
amazing.
Yep.
So let's talk about that culture stuff. Oh, look at that. There's a lion, picture of a lion. This is amazing. Anyway, let's talk about, let's talk about building that culture. When you think about the culture of your band, what is the first thing that pops in your head for your band? Like what if I was to come watch a rehearsal, and I will, I'm just saying I'm that
Let's go.
crazy guy.
Let's go.
What would be some of the things that I see? What are the things that make not necessarily what are the things I guess that make you unique and what make you similar? So what are some cultural things that you believe in for your band program?
I think that we take ourselves seriously and don't take ourselves seriously. And what I explain by that picture you have up there is a great way. We did the Wizard of Oz. So for the spring concert, there you are. The theme was we all dress up from different characters from Wicked and the Wizard of Oz. Now we're going to take seriously the performance of the music that day. Like we want that to be a standard. We want that to be a quality. But at the same time, we're going to do it looking like that you see on your screen. I think that is unique to us. I think we are not willing to be silly, but also be serious when it's time to be serious. Excellence is a serious thing, and we know that transfers into the real life. But I think there are lots of band programs, if you're not careful, because I used to fall in this category. really take ourselves real serious, and I think our work is serious, and that is very important. But we also need to know I am a high school teacher teaching who are going to be adults, but are still kids. You get to smile, even if we're doing Granger as serious as you can, like there is a balance there. I also think what sets us apart is we challenge our kids to be all in. You cannot have the fun you want to have unless you're all the way in, and everything you do in every part of the program, you're all in. Kind of like Scott Lang was saying, I'm sure you're familiar, Scott, you said you're from Arizona, but all in or all out. And that's important. You got to jump all the way in this thing to get everything out of this thing. And I think that those are some things that distinguish us maybe as who we are as Southmoore.
Yes, I like to say about Scott Lang. I knew Scott Lang before he was Scott Lang. So
Sure.
we've been friends for a very, very, very long time. So it's always funny to see as we get older. I didn't go older, by the way. I'm still only like 23 or 24 years old in my head.
Absolutely.
But you think about, your childhood, when you grow up and you're like, oh my gosh, this person has made such an impact on all of us. But I think that's what I like, how would your kids describe you? How culture, how would they describe you?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. I'd like to think that they think that I'm caring and fun loving and love them. I would like to think that they know that I'm about their experience and how that they have a good time. I like to say that when many years from now, when they look back at this experience, I want them to smile. I want them to look back, think of their high school band, and I don't care what comes to their mind. I would care that the smile comes to their mouth. I'd like them to think that I'm silly, but do expect, some excellence and expect them to give their all. I would be interesting question to ask the students what they think of me.
Well,
I don't know if I want all the answers.
There were a couple that popped on here on the questions. Yeah. Maybe they can sneak in.
Okay.
They're obviously proud that you're the director, or they're excited that they're on YouTube and got their comments posted. I'm
probably, but so.
And as I'm looking at the picture on the screen, I'm laughing because for our listeners, there's a picture of our director here dressed as Elf. Got the poinsettias directing the stage, and the kids are all wearing holiday themed outfits. Is that some of the culture? Is that some of the things that you do? Does the kids is that a tradition where you dress up for the Christmas concert?
Yeah,
the holiday concert.
And it's one of those things that just kind of happened. It was one year I was like, hey, how about you, it's ugly Christmas sweater. Let's wear that for the concert. If you'll notice in that picture, though, when we talk about all in, look at the students. So we told them, to dress up for this. And we do this every year with the wind ensemble. And you'll notice that you look at that, they are all in. They are all dressed. They are all doing the thing. Even if it is, okay, I'm supposed to dress up like Christmas, I'm going into this all the way. And I think that you can see some of the both sets of cultures in that picture. Hey, we're going to play that music of that night. We want to play it well, but we're also say, hey, this is fun. And if their director comes out dressed as Elf, that's showing a little bit more of the culture. Hey, we have fun here, but after we are dressed silly, we want to play well. That's important, and that they take that part seriously.
Oh, I love that, because that's one of the things that I love is taking something, because the other thing that puts inside, and maybe we could talk about this, is like student choice. Whether they get to dress up at the concert and something that they do, and maybe there's some examples of some types of student choice that you have. But that's the things that to me that shape the culture of the band is just how it responds, and so I'm sure you have a student leadership team. I'm sure you have those kinds of things. And, maybe you talk about how does your student leadership team function, and how do they help support the band?
The student leadership team is one of the things of the student choice is they get to have as much participation as they want. I try to set up the leadership team, give some training, but also hand that responsibility off to the leaders to then to meet on their own as they think needed, to have discussions on their own and get with me as they need. Of course, I'm still the adult. I still am going to monitor and make sure things are going right. But I look at them as going to be adults. They are adults in training, and this leadership group and the culture they set within it is all about their choice. And once we've kind of set, I've gone through the process of getting maybe a president, they get the floor, and they do a lot of meetings on their own. Now, that being said, there are times when I need to say, like, we need to meet with the director today, and here's some things, I'm seeing. What do you see? The marching band's a perfect example. This as you're teaching a marching band. I'm on the field some, but a lot of my time spent way away from the students, way up in a press box. I don't know the mood on the field. I think I know the mood. They know the mood. They know what's going on. I need that feedback from them, and I need them to help me set the bar and make sure rehearsals are going in such a way that they feel like they can succeed. So I think they have a lot of latitude in their group to make it what they are. And you'll see some years make it a lot, some years not as much, but they're given the freedom to do so.
Yeah, I was thinking to myself because as it's popping in my head, to me, the end of the year is all about it's honoring what has been happened, but it's also it's that balance between like having to look forward to the future and at the same time having to let go of the past, but also in the reverse, celebrating the past and working towards that future. And thinking from culture, from that aspect, how we build culture, how do we hand off and respect what's leaving, and how do we look forward to the future and try to get those kids. So do you have any like thoughts or like stories on student leadership and some of those things that have helped shape, or as you're leading into next year, even though you're going on a cruise ship, just throwing that
That's
out
right.
there, as you're getting to go,
Absolutely.
you know how do you relax in the summer knowing how the next year's going to go? So maybe talk about some of the things that you've handed off for the student leadership getting ready for next year. Like, what is your summer in hold for getting ready for next year?
I think right now we just had our banquet, so that's our good. You probably do this well. Looking back on the last year, you're right when you talk about you're always looking forward. Sometimes it's hard to look back and remind yourself, where you came from, and it's good, especially when we open the school. It's funny you mentioned that there was no past, there was only the future. So it's almost like our culture was created with that in mind. We're always looking ahead because there was no past to look back to, though of course that's different now. I think in terms of our student leaderships, we're in our trainings right now we just did a session on kindness. It's a big deal. I bring that up because I think it's something that we need to spend more time on with our students. Being kind, we think of it as something as easy as adults, but there's lots of opportunities to not be kind digitally, online, and so much words out there that trying to reinforce all of that matters. So now we're trying to set that tone for our students. We just had Scott Lang in. I know, Mitch, I don't mean this. If Scott's listening, which I'm sure he is, because he'd listen to anything I do, but this isn't trying to talk about him too much. But we did just have him in and kind of do another set of the tone for the next year. And then as we pick our drum majors and our student leaders, they will meet with me either digitally, Zoom, or over the summer to kind of have a discussion with them like, okay, what do you see the next year looking like? Give me a perfect picture of the perfect year. We know it's not attainable, but it's like a director. We have the perfect sound in our ear that we want the band to sound like. We know it's not attainable, but how close can we get? How close can we get? The same thing with student leadership. When you're talking about the culture of the band, how close can you get to the perfect scenario? And that's the discussions that we'll be having going into the summer.
Yeah, and I always go back to my David Coons episode because he said something on that episode that I always like to reflect off of people. It's not about perfection, it's really about perfect intent. Because you're right, you cannot achieve perfection, but we as a society always tend to try to get that perfection. But if we go with perfect intent over perfection, you've got something that's attainable as opposed to something that might have has some falter in it, or just but so like that. Now that leads to me to the next thing, because Scott's a little intense. He talks faster than I do. My Lord Almighty. I think sure. I will never forget the comment once. And he said, I go, you talk really fast. He goes, well, you need to listen faster. I'm like, okay.
Right.
And so I was thinking about it always leads down to the, culture, communication, collaboration. All the C words seem to be very, prevalent in these culture conversations. So let's talk about communication. So, and maybe this is, as we approach the end of the year, congratulations if this is your last week, anyone out there. I'm a little envious. Until August, but I'm just saying, how do you keep the communication flowing? Because we all do it different. I'm a big believer in the complete reset during the summer. Like if we collaborate or we talk about it, there might be a day we check in with each other, but it doesn't have to be, and it really is to me, it's like the 7-day check-in. If camp is this day, then 7 days in before that, then we're back to normal, and just know that's when I won't bother you and find your personal space, because I don't want you to think about it. I want you to refresh, revive, renew. I think this sounds like a deodorant, but how do you keep what's your communication strategy with the kids in the summer, or even just communication strategies overall?
I think that I agree with you. I think especially in the marching arts today, the what it takes to be successful is a broad term, and we probably talk about later what is successful. But for me, the success has to do with I want the kids to feel good about their performance. And so to do that, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time. So we do need a reset in the summer, and we did start doing here recently with our wins. Like there just nothing happens in June, and that's like we just are not going to do anything in June at all. We're going to maybe come back a little bit in July. And play a little bit. That's the rehearsal wise. In terms of communication with the students, it's the same thing. I like to use, though, check-in videos through Canvas, our operating system that is for our grades and things. Yeah, so we can talk about that's a whole nother whether I like Canvas or not. But what it does, but it does give me a possibility to to send out short little videos. Hey guys, hope everything's going well. Here's some thoughts that I'm thinking about. Here's some things that are going to come up in our leadership group, and to kind of keep them just enough engaged that we don't disconnect. Because if you disconnect completely, you don't want to lose kids. You want to make sure that you're also keeping them connected enough, but letting them give that space. So the summer for us, at least in June and a little in some of July, we try to make it a little tame, because we know when we hit what we call our 2-a-days, maybe a lot of people call their band camp, whatever it is that they're doing, that's go time. And we know when go time happens that there's a lot of time invested into excellence, and so it's real important to leave that space in as much of the summer as you can.
It's funny. I'm going to do a slight ad for Music for All, because you said the funny thing, because that just popped in my head. So I'll be at the Directors Academy June 23rd through 28th. So if anybody's interested in the Directors Academy for Music for All, you should totally think about being a part. Amazing. And it's funny for me, because like I said, since my year goes so late, I literally get done on a Tuesday. I'm on a plane with the kids headed to Disney. We're actually doing it after the school year's ends. And I get home from that, and then I head to the Directors Camp. I really don't start my year, and I've actually just learned to accept this. Just wait July 1st. That's where my refresh, revive, renew really starts for some of that. So hey, actually I want to say something really just like a plug for about Canvas, because you mentioned that for a lot of people who don't know out there, Canvas is the system that you use for your grade system, you use for your classes. If you have Canvas and I will flat out tell you, I used to, when we first got Canvas in my old district, I always tell people I don't love Canvas. I'm in love with Canvas, because it is such an amazing tool once you get to use some of the resources. So for those out there, it's like Google Classroom, it's like Schoology, it's like all of those things. And I think I love that, that you have that use it in the summer, because you can actually stay connected with the kids. Or how do you have any special Canvas actually things that you used? I mean, maybe you can share some of your collaborative ways that you use technology. That's great.
Absolutely. I think one of the best, we talk about building culture. So I teach my 9th grade band weekly assignments, and I provide video feedback. And that video feedback is a great way that I get to know the kids. My video feedback, I try to, in fact, my daughter was making fun of me. It's like, you told them they didn't do good, but you told jokes around it. They don't even know, she was, kind of catching on to that. And we'll have it back and forth. I have a student who still has their Christmas tree up through April, that type of thing. And there's a little banter via Canvas that I'm giving with her, but we're also taking care of content, because we're talking about how we're playing. We're giving input on things to get better at. And in the middle of that, I'm also giving banter to the student about, hey, maybe I'll tell them a good job, things like that, but also some humor and some back and forth. And I think the video part of that, where you can give actual video input, is so key, because you can do obviously what you're trying to do to teach the student, but also kind of get to know the student, because I have found some of my most introverted students will send me some silly video back. I remember had a student who hardly talked in class. She's sending me back videos with her in all kinds of costumes and stuff, because we're having a banter back and forth. It's a contest of, who has the stupidest hat. And now, but through Canvas of all things, I've gotten to know the kid a little better, and I've created some moments there. So, and it's above board. And I think it's a great tool to use and for all kinds of things, obviously communication, but then also education.
Yeah, I love using those kinds of things, because you can always ask for hey, can you send me Here's one of those things I love using it for is like, hey, section leader, can you please record this section for everyone and I'll distribute it
Mhm,
to everyone. So like,
mhm,
hey, here's the articulations I want. So, but I think Canvas is great. It can be used much more than it's not just a grading device. It's what you can make. To me, it's a dynamic website. You can use it for question strategy.
mhm.
I love the send in something funny. You know, Matt Wood on our first episode talked about, on Mondays, just checking when the kids. I still use that now to this day, where you just ask the kids a question. It's a great way
Mhm.
to get the week started because a lot of times the kids just checked out, and it already, who wants to share what they did something this weekend. You can use Canvas in the summer for that very thing. You can
Mhm.
you can say,
Mhm.
hey, send me a 2-minute video with your pet. No, 2 minutes is a long time with a pet. I'm just saying, send me a video with your pet, just to be,
Sure.
and that goes back to my question about humor, because I can tell you're a jovial person, but how do you use humor to your advantage or as a teaching tool?
It's to humanize yourself. I think one of the big things that I really demand from the students in terms of, and this is a culture thing, is I like to say I am not ban Google. And I'll give you an example.
Oh.
A student, yeah, I mean, you know exactly what I'm saying. A student busts in your
Mhm.
office, okay, and they just start asking a question, okay. Now at that moment, I am Google. I am not a human. They needed, and adults will do this as well, and I will kindly kind of ask the same from them as well, because in that moment, maybe they just saw me and they needed to talk to me. They had a question, and boom, they come in. I'm like, whoa, 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 you have to say hello to me first. And that's a strategy. It's very important that I what I'm saying is, yes, I'm going to answer your questions, not that, but you're going to humanize me and I'm going to humanize you. We're going to say hello to each other back and forth, and then we're going to get the question settled. And in terms of using humor, I'm all the time walking through the band room, and it's little quick shots that I'm joking with the kids. There's a group of kids right now. I'm always giving them the loser sign. Now I don't think they're losers. They know it's a back and forth, but it's a pop back and forth with them. It's creating a relationship in the sense that yes, I'm their teacher. I'm absolutely hopefully someone to respect, but I'm a human being. And humor really takes down the teacher deal to remind folks that you're human. It's like when you see your students see at Walmart and they get all freaked out, like, what's this person doing outside of the band room? It's the same, like what's like seeing Mr. Mewhorter in the wild. I think anything we can do to humanize ourselves, and I use humor in everything I can on my communications, my band bulletins. We talked a little bit about that. Band bulletins is my weekly, hopefully read this and you know what's going on sheet. There's going to be humor in that.
I like the word hopefully. I like that was my
Yes.
favorite word of that one.
You always get you make it available and pray it's read. So and anything I send out, trip things, whatever, it's always want to have a joke or two in it. I think it humanizes both me, but it also humanizes the program as not just a place where you're a number and we're hoping to use you to make success happen for Southmoore or the directors. These are human beings on the field performing music, and if you don't have humans performing music, you have just computers performing music. It's not good enough. Humans perform music. Humans do that. And I think by humanizing myself, humor is a huge strategy in that.
Okay, message received. How you doing today, Adam? We haven't really talked. I'm kidding. I'm just. Are you having a good day so far? I mean,
I'm
not
okay.
bad. Uh,
Sure.
Sorry, I use humor as my tool. Or I always,
Absolutely.
it's funny you say that Google thing because I always yell.
Mhm.
I guess yells that's the opportune word. I'm
Sure.
an '80s child. I say yell, but it's like
Sure.
okay, washougalbands.org. What is missing? So here's my hot take. I haven't done a hot take with you. My
Okay.
hot take is if you're not receiving email from parents, it's because they're informed enough that they don't have to have a question for you.
That's
What do you
right.
think on that?
I think that's exactly true. And I mean, I do obviously get emails from parents, but it's kind of, I don't know if you go through this. You'll get a question of something, and it'd be interesting to know how directors deal with this because I think it's one of our pet peeves. You'll get a question, "Hey, what time's the concert?" Now you've sent it
Mm.
out 15,000 times and 20 different things, so you have a choice to make there. You want to be snarky or you want to answer the question. So
Ugh.
it's tough, isn't it? And so, but I try never to be snarky. I may copy and paste where I put it out there. Hopefully that's not too passive aggressive. But to be fair though, to parents, I do want to speak to that. We as parents, I'm a parent, we have so much information thrown at us from so many different places. I am much more understanding of maybe
Mhm.
why I may get a question or two because our school district, we used to use the band app. a state law was passed where essentially what ended up is that we couldn't use that anymore. We had to use this school system. So what's happened is that we have the one school system, which includes a band, which means they're getting hit with all kinds of stuff from there, from all their classes. And of course they missed the fact that you're supposed to wear dress black to the thing. They got hit with 25 messages that day. So I think it's also remembering I need to make sure I always do a good job of humanizing these parents. Sometimes as directors, we can be a little bit on the like, oh, they just don't read my stuff. Don't they know all the work I do? Well, sure they do, except that they've been hit with so many things. It's easy to miss, So
well, that's my snarky comment. Like, people keep sending emails like I'm reading them. Why do they keep thinking this is going to happen?
Exactly.
I'll make you like, it's week of musical. I am so happy I am current. Like, and I finally, sometimes I'll be like, can you just tell me what it says? Because I tried.
Yep, that's right.
I've read 100 emails where like the context, I read it, comprehension did not occur. It's like we all, how much information, and you're a band director, how much information is thrown at you on a daily basis?
100. And I always feel bad for the same result. I'll get, someone say, well, did you get my email? And like, I did.
Yes, I got it.
And then you feel it's like, no, I promise I was doing something. I think sometimes I feel that this worry, like they do know that I am working, right? If I haven't got back to it, I know you probably feel the same thing.
I can tell you right now.
Yes.
Right, first thing tomorrow morning, I'm running to my ASB office to go give a signature because she said, "Can you come to my office?" And I'll be right there. Okay, that was Friday, and then we were in the middle of the musical, and I just remembered I forgot. So like it's that same thing. It's like, I am horribly that, squirrel.
Yes.
That's, and then, but we all, I always say this, I think everyone understands once we get going, but I and so I wrote down some notes from our conversation so far.
Sure.
So what I got out of that is relationships and communication. So those are my, like, maybe I'll just do this. Which topic do you want to follow next? Because I really feel like, our relationship with our parents is one thing. Our relationship with our students is another thing. Our relationship with our administration and even teachers is a third thing. Like last night, my superintendent came to the show last night, shook my hand. That makes me feel super good. Even if it's just, it's those things I have to remember, the humanizing of our positions. We band directors like to think that we're the most important thing going on, but sometimes it's just the human case of connection. So maybe thought we can talk about the relationships, in your program. Maybe it was, we talked a little bit about communication with the relationship with parents, relationship with students, but just in terms of relationships overall, what are your beliefs on, what are your thoughts? I'll just use the word relationships.
Sure. You have to know this. I mean, I know any teacher listening to this, we've heard over and over again, you have to know the students. And then you have to really kind of think like, do I know the students? This has become more challenging for me. When I first started teaching, I was in a small school. I had 30 people in the first band. I mean, though we grew it to a good size, I knew those students. I really knew those students. And it was a numbers game. It was easier to know the students. As I have a band now, and a very, very fortunate, it's just I have a larger band now just because of where I live and the size of school I'm at. So that becomes more difficult. How do you do that? The first thing I do is make sure that it is imperative that I teach the freshman band. Freshman band is where all of our students go through. I'm going to teach every student a little more direct that way, and I'm going to use that semester as best I can to get to know those kids because I have a smaller amount of them in that particular time, and that is my opportunity to get to know them, to ask them questions, to talk with them before and after class, which is huge. And it doesn't. You mentioned something. Your superintendent just shook your hand. I think it's funny as us directors to think a few small sentences to a student at the right time can make a major impact. Hey, I want you to know that I hear what you're playing there. You're really making some progress there. All of a sudden, I mean, in 3 seconds, that kid's day is different because I've taken the time to do that. And I think if we're not careful as band directors, because you just mentioned it, we feel like we're drowning in things to do. It's like these plates that are spinning, and if you're not worried, there's a stress in all the things you haven't gotten done that you can't get to because you have whatever's in front of you. It's not possible to get to. I have to make sure I'm prioritizing getting to know the students, getting out of my office and talking to them. And sometimes I struggle with that. I really do. And not just that, our parents. A lot of times we see parents when we are in the midst of working. So how can I just find sneaky times to like, hey, ask a little bit about them. Now I don't know just a kid. I know their family just a little bit. I'm not going to know them all real well, but I'm going to know as many of them as I can. And I think it's really tough in our profession because, especially as a band director, you're in the center, you have the students, the parents, administration, and then here you are right here. And there's all these relationships that you got to hone down. Another thing that I did that's been really successful is I do what it's called Thank You Thursday. And I try to get through the entire incoming freshman on Thursday, write a handwritten thank you card for putting their kid in the program. And it's called Thank You Thursday. I'm going to do this. Everything stops till I have a list till I write these letters and mail them out, handwritten personal letters, not a form, not a, they get a lot of stuff from me that's for mass reading. This is for them and their family. And that's a big thing. I've taken a lot of compliments of that over the years. Like, hey, that seemed unique to some. So those are some of the ways I try to go about really building relationships with those, and also with your administration. You know that there is a week that we just came off a teacher week.
Yeah,
there's an administration week. And listen, we need to be talking to our administrators at times that have nothing to do with something bad has happened. It's real important, even if it's just I like to poke my head in and tell a joke and walk out. Hey, how you doing? Yeah, kind of messy office. Keep up the good work. I mean, they know it's a joke, but that I've made a connection there. They remind the bands there, but also I've made a human connection to them because their job's really tough. And I think making sure that we keep that connection as well.
Don't you think though? I think a lot of times we band directors, and here's sort of my problem. I used to be an administrator, 11 years an administrator, and I've gone back to teaching. I have a completely different thought process of what an administrator is because I now know what they do as opposed to what I think they do. And I think the problem is when, for 20 years, when I thought what they did compared to the 10 that I know what they did. One of the things I like to do is always walk into an administrator at a random time and just say, I just want you to know, I don't care what you're going through. I appreciate what you do. I don't think you understand. And because the parents need to hear it, the students need to hear it. And I wrote down some of my notes as we were talking here. It goes back to critic and critique. But I think sometimes, I think we sometimes forget, and it goes back to this woman in Paradise Valley, Arizona, who used the phrase, we always remember somebody for how they make you feel. And so, and I always think about it as, we just got over, I just finished my last, festival season. And I think sometimes, depending on what festival, what kind, what genre, it doesn't matter. We get so caught up in the criticisms and the critique that we forget we need to point out the good. We need to point out all of those things because we get so sometimes focused, even in our own rehearsals. I mean, don't you think sometimes we get too focused on fixing things rather than praising things?
I think you are dead on. We are professional critics by profession. That is literally what we do. Like, we are trained to listen to something, find what's wrong and fix it. And when what we do, because there's always something wrong, that's all we do. There is always something wrong. We can find in the most quote unquote flawless performance, you can find something in there. And we are trained to do that. And you're 100% dead on. If we're not intentional about praising, and sometimes another thing, I deal with this. I think there's an unspoken pressure is if you say maybe something's good, maybe you as a director aren't good. It's this weird almost phenomenon like, well, did you not hear this? Is something wrong with your ears? Like, no, I'm just saying there are good things happening here. Yes, I'm aware of the bad things, but can we stop for a moment and realize this is hard, what we're asking these students to do? And they're putting all kinds of time into it as well. We have to stop and remember that there's a lot good. In fact, it's mostly good. And I think you're dead on when you say that.
Can you not hear that G flat major chord is off?
Yes.
Can you? What's going on, kids? How dare you?
Yes, exactly.
And that's what I feel like sometimes. Sometimes I forget what we're asking of them, and maybe maybe it's the musical that makes it put. Hey, we're in G flat right now. But the fact that I'm not hearing, as I say, I'm hearing all the right notes. It's like that's like a celebration, and also playing in G flat. That key is one of my favorites. But if we don't ever, it goes back. So like, I'm thinking, here's my like thought. I was judging a few weeks ago, and I was talking to some of the other judges because you get caught even as a judge, because I believe in I've done I've done all the trainings, I've done all the things, But I do believe we get caught up when we're judging that we forget to humanize, like, oh my gosh, I want to thank you so much. Oh my God, that was actually glorious. Here's some of the good things I want to hear. And I forget sometimes we need to talk to the kids as much as we need to talk to the director. Because as a judge, I feel, and maybe this is, tell me if I'm wrong. Sometimes I feel when you listen to recordings that you're listening to someone who feel like they just have to know that they're the expert over you, but you're like, I'm an expert as well. And if you I didn't think the piccolo was sharp on that note, you're crazy. What I want to hear is, and I'll give you my idea. What I want to hear is like, like, here's how you would have corrected so that the kid can hear it, and maybe it was 82 degrees on the stage at your performance. And maybe that is what affected it. Your kids aren't used to that. But here's one of my ideas for a festival. First off, I always say this. Imagine if we got judges to sit around a circle and we put one mic out between the three judges and we treated it as a professional development session. So not only are you critiquing what you hear, but you're actually feeding it. Well, maybe that was, that, oh my gosh, that section of the divertimento is blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying? I would love to, I think we've just gotten caught up into like, hey, we go play, here's your three scores and possibly one for the clinician. I'm just saying, depends on your state. But a lot of times you get caught up in the critique. And it's like, oh my gosh, I can tell, or something that randomly happened and you get a critique on, you're like, that never happens. That was thing. But there's got to be a way for us in trying to make the critique more positive and just to make some of those things and that goes back to our rehearsals. How do we make our rehearsals more positive? Sometimes we get so focused, especially if it's before a concert, or at the end, or for you, probably graduation, or did that happen last week? I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
Oh my gosh. But how do you keep the negative positive? What are the ways that you keep positive speak in your band program?
Well, you have to be intentional about it, because I use the example of marching season, because I can tell you, and of course, this is the Bands of American Music for All podcast. There's going to be some really high quality groups, and I know in our state in Oklahoma, we're home to just fabulous marching. Yeah, it's fabulous marching bands, and you can really, if you're not careful, you're putting yourself up in your eyes, and when you go to contests against literally what is the best in the country. So how there becomes this ingrained pressure in your rehearsals, like, I'm trying to get there, and the only way to get there is to tell them what's wrong, and if I don't tell them what's wrong, they won't fix it, and then what do we do? And when you're tired, because it's the middle of March, it's kind of like when you're going through the musical has the exact same emotions where you're just spent. Marching season the same way, and you have to be really careful to make sure that there is some positive, and reminding these kids who are showing up hours upon hours upon hours, really for you. They're believing in you, the director. When it really comes down to it, that's who they're putting their faith and trust in. You have got to remind them of the excellence and how proud you are. Because here's the thing when it comes to band kids, and I try to tell them this all the time. You are unique. You are special. And I'm here to tell you, there are adults that in this world, the majority of them would not put in the time and effort that you are putting in as a human right this second. And that is to be applauded. And it doesn't matter what the score is in the end. It doesn't matter if the general effect and there's too much movement or whatever, that we didn't do enough color, or the explosion didn't happen at the right time. The live animals didn't come out when they're supposed to. Whatever happens there, they are worthy of and how they have been as students for you and your program to be applauded for that time and effort, and the fact that they are trying to reach something that is so difficult. So we as directors, if we're not careful, because we get in our own mind space, our own comparative mind, and remember, comparison is a thief of joy. And that's real important. It's a thief of joy. If you got to be able to say, hey, what we're doing is great, and we're in a different circumstance than others, and others are in a different circumstance than us. And we have to be intentional about finding stuff that is good happening. And I'm here to tell you, some days I do it better than others. For sure. That is a work in progress. I believe we do it, but I could always believe we could do it better.
Is how you lead and like how you are, is this something that you've changed over the years? Is this something that you've always been? I always say this, what drives Adam? How do you keep this consistency? How did you become this person? Like, maybe is there a story or something that has made you who you are, or what? Is there anything that has shaped who you are, really?
I think I've been pretty consistent, but there is one thing that happened. My fourth year of teaching, I was in a small community in southern Oklahoma, and we had it. Like I said, that was it was a total. We talked before we started. It was a rebuild, a complete rebuild of a program that we were in the middle of, and I had a student in there. We had a football game coming up, and I'll never forget this. They said, they couldn't go to the game, and of course, you get some director like, what do you mean you cannot go to the football game? It says here on page 5 of the rules here, you will go to the games or terrible things happen. Her family was opening up a business that Friday. They needed her in the store. It was their livelihood. But here I am, the band director, okay, putting myself in the way of like, no, I'm sorry, this is going to be a problem. You can't do that. Well, they didn't go. Of course she didn't go. How could she? And then they didn't go the next week. And then I was upset. I was a young director. Like, how can I build this program if you don't show up? You just show up when you want to. They came and talked to me, and it was an eye-opening moment of what I was asking at that moment from this family to abandon their livelihood over. It's in their eyes. I mean, one little football game. Are you kidding me? Like, we will get back. Now, don't get me wrong. I know there'll be directors listening. Like, you have to show up to things. I do get that, but it changed my whole handbook from that moment forward. My handbook at that moment was 17 pages of do and don'ts. If you look at my handbook now, it's 6 pages, and it says things like, instead of like, here's the attendance policy, it'll say creating a culture where everyone wants to be there. That's the attendance policy. It was such an eye-opening moment. Here's how I create excellence. And it's like, no, we're going to create a culture that achieves excellence because we want it to happen. And it's just 12 bullet points, and that's it. And that student stayed in band. My eyes were open. There are times when now don't get me, I know there's directors out there when they just skip, those things happen. We're not talking about that. We're talking about, human beings. And I had dehumanized her at that moment until my eyes were open to that.
You've got my brain on a roll here. So we'll do another hot take. And so this is like a little personalization here. I don't believe my concerts are mandatory, but they are expected, and you always show up. It's not a grade necessarily to come to the concert. It's what you do for the concert and the reflection system after. And so I've never really made the performance the mandatory. But the thing is, every kid shows up. So I would like your thought on that, because I was thinking I had to make a quick change this week. So for example, we're going to have to perform on Wednesday night when we thought it was a week from Monday. And I sent out the thing, and then I had a student say, you can't make this a grade book. I'm like, it's not really a grade book. That's not my point. And I had that understanding, just like, here's another example, just to lead off of it. I took my kids to jazz festival on Good Friday. And so I had a family that couldn't make it. And my answer in my head was, I'm fine with that. If your family has decided to go somewhere for Good Friday, I am fine with that. And you know what my thing is? Have you ever been at a pro gig where like something happened, an emergency, or for example, you got strep throat the night before and you're not going to be able to show up? Those things do happen. So I'm always under this auspices and you said it earlier. I was just thinking about this. That's why I like talking in front of other directors is if there's a reason, I'm okay with it, but the expectation is you are there. Just like I'm the band director. At what point do I have the option of not showing up? And the option is never. And I think the kids understand that. I think the families go about that. And I think you said it, and you're thinking about that fourth year, you could either be, dead right, so to speak, or you could like learn to accommodate what is actually right. And so how do we deal with some of those things, and maybe tell people, I don't give points for showing up. I don't believe in it. I don't think that's like, you're in band, you have to show up. It's like saying I'm going to get paid for my job. Well, if I don't show up, I don't get paid. Well, that's what you don't, that's the same expectation. So, along those lines, what are some of the things that we can do as directors to make that happen? And so I just thinking of your story, it's like, yeah, we do have to have that human side. Is there any thoughts on that, or, what do you think?
Yeah. My attendance was worse when my culture was worse. It's just that simple. And once you have a culture that is built by the students, and I think that's a huge part of the culture as well, a director built culture will fall. A director influenced culture that the students built will stand. And that is hugely important. And I didn't understand that in my early years. I was the person who did the culture, and I created the culture. And what I would find is that would fall over and over again as a student bought in, wasn't there. And that's why I talked about earlier, being all in is so important. So once your culture is that they want to be there, then they're there. And it's not to oversimplify it, but it is the truth. You don't have attendance problems when people want to be there. They don't want to miss it because that's where their friends are at. They don't want to miss it because they've been working hard for it. Where you occasionally have some issues is, rehearsals here and there, but it's usually after you had lots of rehearsals, and it is very busy. And occasionally you're having to deal with, I was tired. And we talk about that, there's a difference between sick and tired. Those are two different things. And it's a training moment, not a discipline moment. And what we have found is that the culture of the program takes care of the attendance. And it took me many, many, many years to understand that. I thought I took care of the attendance. What I learned is the kids' culture took care of the attendance. And also, in the most important part, the humanization. They need to understand that if they are not there, we miss them as a human being. We want them there. And I talked to the parents about this. We do not apologize for wanting your student to be at everything. It is not bad to be wanted. They are wanted. And I think that's a whole paradigm shift. You don't have to be there because you must be there. We want you to be there because you're with us. You're on the team. We want you there. That paradigm is much different than the you have to be there because I said. And I think those are real important.
Well, I think that goes back to relationships. And I think that's part of the, how we build these relationships is quite unique. Like I said, we all have I always say we're all snowflakes. We all have our own different personalities. We have our own different teaching styles. We all have our own, non-negotiables of what it's like in the classroom. I'm sure what you expect when your kids walk in the door is different than what I expect when the kids walk in the door. But we all do something in common. We produce a product to the best ability that we can. And and just again, to personalize, my students at my school have never let me down in the 4 years that I have been there. And I always tell them, you don't make me feel that way though. Sometimes if I have hey, how many people are showing up to this gig, it's like, oh my God, there's only going to be 5 or 6 kids, and then it ends up being like 50 kids, and you're like, I don't know why I worry. They've never let me down. And I don't expect that anytime soon. And the neat thing is, it goes back to that again: communicationship, relationships, all of those above. So I'm going to ask you one more question, and then we're going to get to that final thought of the day.
Sure.
So and I always say this: we all teach in big schools, small schools, smaller schools, and I think it's all different. But I think that what's really most important is we do what we do best in our situation. What is one thing that you could say to, what do you think you could say to a band director out there, maybe a newer team? Like, what would make you successful, or what do you wish every band director knew about culture from your standpoint?
I feel like what it's taken me a long time to understand is that culture there is an immediate culture. There's the fact that you've come in, you're new to whatever your program, you've set your parameters, and there's going to be a culture shift right off the bat because there's a new person in front of you. But the true culture you're wanting to create is a process. It takes longer than you want. And when you have made it to what you really want it, and I can see that now. If you'd have asked me 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, I'd say things are going really well. But I see also my band program now and see how much even better that culture is. What I saw 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago in the Southmoore band, I would have said, we got a culture thing going on here. But I see now and see how much even better it is. I'm starting to understand this has been a long haul process of decisions upon decisions upon that have created the culture and that we created. And I hope 5 years from now, I'll look back at the band now and go, yeah, we thought we had it, but man, look at this. It continues to evolve, it continues to get better. And I think understanding that, and, it maybe even before, if you're starting to get out other opportunities because you think it'll just never make it where you're at, consider maybe you haven't been there long enough to make it where it's at yet. And I know there's other reasons, that maybe, but just saying, if you have a situation that's okay, that's something that's real important, and to look at that. And two, I bet your band room is like this too. I know that I've got a culture. If I can't it's time to leave and it's hour, 2, 3 hours after school's out, kids are still there. I can't get him out of the room. It is such a no. We have to go home. Like you go home. What do you mean? I live here. I know. Like, but what that's saying is there's two things I watch. Are kids staying after school, and then I pay attention after concerts. Are people screaming out of there, or are they staying because they like how it felt? They liked not just the music, but the surrounding, the environment. And if I have a concert where I see lots of people milling about, that's a sign that they're not wanting to leave yet. It felt right. That's culture. That culture created that environment created that. And those are some earmarks, I think, as a young director to kind of look for.
Well, it kind of combines our last bit. So like the scary part is, as I always say, we already been going like 55 minutes and it feels like it's only been like two,
I know.
like it feels like 2 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And we haven't even really got to know each other the way I want to. Cause like I'm wanting to do another culture, like another episode. And we just talk about the relationship that build. Cause that's what, I'm hearing. So I always like to say, I would love to watch a rehearsal just so, and I say this, I'm such a nerd. Like here, look, I have my pad with me wherever I go. It's with me cause I'm old school folks. And I need to write it down because no matter how much I have my phone with me, I need to write it down. I do better. So even though you kind of shared most of it, do you have any final thoughts on culture, or maybe, what's your final thought?
Culture. I think number one, understanding that, and I love the title of this podcast, Culture Before Content. I think if we're not careful, we dive straight into the content, and what we don't understand, that content means nothing if we don't have the culture to accept it. And your content, though you can learn, you're going to learn much better in a culture of excellence, but of compassion, of kindness, of inclusivity. If this is music for all, is it music for all? And that's real important. Where is your mind space? Is it music for all, or is it music for those who afford it, or is it music for those who could walk, or is it music for those whatever? Like you're where you're at in your headspace, and how you feel about music will help create that culture. But the last part, it has to be student led and student driven to have any type of standing for a long time. If you're the only one setting it, it will fall. And I think that's real important to note that do you have to include your students, guide your students, teach your students, but then allow them to implement the culture in the best way, because that's what's going to have the staying power.
Well, I want to say, first off, here's my compliment for the day. You should have a podcast. You have like an incredible speaker voice. Like I'm like listening over here going, this is a great podcast. But oh my gosh, before you go today, I do want to share some of your things. So for our listeners out there, it's Adam Mewhorter, which is ADAMMEWHORTER at More Schools, MOORE schools. I figure you can spell that .com. So Adam Mewhorter at moreschools.com. Check out his band website. What was your band? It was Southmoore.band.com. I should write these things down before I start talking about them. But oh my gosh, Adam, it has been just a pure treat to have you on the episode today. I would love to spend some more time talking to you. And like I said, the neat thing about this for me personally is I get a chance to build a relationship with somebody I've learned, and I learned something from all you. I have my notes. I got my notepad.
Well, I will be at Summer. I'll be at Summer Symposium, so I'll see you there.
Oh wow! So then we can hang out.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think I arrive at like 11:35 at night. I'm
all right.
After being at Disney for all right. Anyway, I digress. Thank you so much for being on the show, Adam. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thank you all for listening. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining us. We invite you to share this exciting podcast on your social media. By doing so, you'll help us spread our message and reach even more amazing teachers who can benefit from listening. And a friendly reminder that you can access this on YouTube, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other platforms. Simply go to musicforall.org/podcast. You can reach me at david.duarte@me.com. And this is possible thanks to the amazing Culture Before Content team, who I am so thankful for. And I want to thank Music for All and our wonderful national presenting sponsor, Yamaha, for their invaluable support. But most of all, thank you for being a part of our culture today. It's never too late. Start tomorrow. I'm David Duarte, your host, and I look forward to having you with us next time.